Let's talk family. Let's talk family about the things that impact us as individual family members, as a whole, as a community family, and as a country family. Let's Talk Family Live. Let's Talk Family is a program brought to you by Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries is a counseling organization that primarily offers individual, family, and relationship counseling. We have counselors who are available to speak on a number of subjects for your conferences for church, school, or work. Family Life Ministries is also known for its media programs, the divorce recovery program Fresh Start, and its company counseling package, the Employee Assistance Program. Visit our website at www.familylifeministriesjamaica.com. Find us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries or on Instagram at FLMJA, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries FLMJA. We'll give our numbers at the end of this program. Now here's today's episode of Let's Talk Family.
Welcome to Let's Talk Family. I am your host, Nicola Carrara. Let's start off by looking at Luke 6, verse 31. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. Good evening, everyone. What does the word love mean to you? How do you show your love, especially for that special someone in your life? And what do they consider a sign that you love them, and vice versa? Well, let's explore the concept of love languages. And today, here to guide us is Sonia Winter, licensed associate clinical psychologist. Welcome, Mrs. Winter.
Hi, Nicola. Please call me Sonia, first of all. But thanks very much for having me speak about my very favorite topic, intimate relationships.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sonia. And just call me Nikki then.
Will do.
Well, first of all, what does it mean by the phrase or concept love languages?
Okay, here's the thing. The great thing about it is that more and more people are learning about love languages, so it's almost becoming like part of our general language, when people meet together and so on. But it's a phrase and a terminology and a concept that arose from work done by a marriage counselor called Dr. Gary Chapman. And what happened is that through his therapy that he offered to couples in distress, he noticed over and over that they would often voice similar complaints regarding their relationship. And usually one spouse might say something like, I feel like he just doesn't love me. And the other one would protest, I don't know what else to do. I'm doing everything I should be doing. And this was a pattern that Dr. Chapman recognized after going through years and years of offering therapy. And looking at his notes, he said he noticed when one person says, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what do they actually want? And lo and behold, all the answers that came up fell into 5 interesting categories. And through this examination of his notes and so on, he realized that there's this unique approach in how individuals effectively express and receive love from another person. And this he termed 5 different love languages because it fell into 5 very interesting categories. And so this is a concept that's now 25 years old, and it has actually improved a lot of relationships all over the world. And because the truth is, once you know your partner's love language, you're able to build a stronger connection with them if you can speak in that language or take the actions that they need, because it arouses positive emotions and it really helps you to feel connected to this person.
So that seems very, very important to know the other person's love language. But how are you going to know it?
Let's talk about your partner or even your child's love language is by listening to and observing how they respond to specific actions. And that will help you to understand what their love language is. So, for example, let's say your partner or your child often asks for hugs and wants to cuddle or wants to sit on your lap. You would probably not be terribly wrong if you bet that receiving touch is a primary or maybe even a secondary love language for this person. Or does their face light up when you compliment them? Then chances are words of affirmation is their love language. Okay. And of course, to identify your own love language, Dr. Chapman has an assessment that you can actually go and do on his website and ask certain questions, and he gives you a measure, and that gives you a sense of what appeals to you and how you understand the expression of love.
Okay, so could you tell me the 5 love languages then?
Sure. They are as follows. Words of affirmation is one. Quality time is another. Receiving gifts is a third. Acts of service is another. And physical touch is the 5th one.
Wow. So is this all about romantic relationships?
No, it isn't at all. It's for any relationship that is important to you, because it's a way of connecting. It's a way of feeling safe. It's a way of receiving affirmation and affection from somebody that you care for. So it most often it's most relevant, I suppose, in adult couple relationships, but also in families, even in the workplace, I would say. If your employee needs words of affirmations more so than anything else, then it's something important to know. So it's for important relationships where connection is important.
Well, so it seems like you really have to be in tune to the person to actually know what's going on with them, to actually give them this love language or speak in their love language.
Exactly. That's right, Nikki.
Okay, so then how do I know? Because you spoke about primary and secondary love language. How do I know which one is mine?
Okay. Again, you can do the assessment if it's not clear to you, but you can kind of observe yourself and examine yourself. When do I actually feel most connected to this important person in my life? When do I walk away feeling safe? And that kind of gives you a sense of, that kind of points you in the direction of what your love language probably is. And then, of course, knowledge is half the battle. By just sharing the 5 love languages and seeing what they mean informs you as well. It's easier to put yourself in a category.
Right. Now, speaking about safe, let's go back to the workplace, because that is a touchy situation, especially when it comes to physical touch. How do you do physical touch and even give gifts in a situation where it's a business relationship?
Well, I think that physical touch is almost out of bounds for most professional relationships. Okay.
Yes.
So that's where a boundary has to be drawn. And there's often a hierarchy of power in a business relationship. There's one subordinate to another. And I think it's incumbent on both to be very sensitive to the boundaries that relate to physical touch, But then when it comes to gifts, maybe just a note, an email that says, I noticed that you like this book. Here's a recommendation for another. That could be seen as a gift. You know what I mean? Just noticing something that appeals to the person, pointing them in the right direction, a suggestion for something. Oh, you were talking about eating here. What about trying out this restaurant? That sort of a thing could be seen as a gift as well.
Okay, so it's interesting because you're talking about boundaries. So we must be very careful what we're doing when we're speaking these love languages, because there are boundaries.
Exactly. And that requires, as you said, sensitivity and being attuned to the individual as well. And then, of course, in some settings, the boundaries are very well defined, such as in the workplace, in an employee manual or workplace manual or something like that. But outside of that setting, it's very important to be in tune with the needs of the person that you're trying to connect with.
Okay, so then what you're basically saying is we can speak love languages in the workplace, but it must be appropriate.
Indeed. That's a good way to put it, Nikki.
Good, because I just wanted to make sure. Now, in all these different relationships, we want to speak this fluently, just as you are. Mm-hmm. So how would you say is the best way to speak these love languages?
Mm-hmm. I think it would depend on what the love language actually is. So there are different ways to speak each of the 5 love languages, And again, it requires being attuned to the recipient, as it were, And I think we will get into that a little later on when we become very specific about each of the 5 love languages and what do each of these approaches look like in a relationship.
Right. I was speaking to someone recently and she told me, I have all 5 love languages. Is this possible?
I imagine it is, for sure. Some of us are more attuned to affection and affirmation generally and sensitive, so that however a person is expressing it, whether it be one form of love language or another, there's some of us who are just very sensitive and can pick up and be attuned to the intentions and therefore the affection and expression of love from another person. So I think that's quite possible. Indeed, I would agree. And she will probably be the beneficiary because she's so open. You know what I mean?
She is quite open.
She's quite open. So she'll be blessed many times over, more than those of us who are looking in one direction only,
So talking about open, is it okay to tell someone, this is my love language, I want it like this?
Absolutely is. Of course, you have to be delicate in how you go about it so that the person doesn't feel accused or enslaved. But it's more sharing with the person, this is how you can shine for me. This is how you can just make me feel so empowered, so attuned to you if you do these sort of things. And it speaks to what the person can, and how you express it again is important in terms of expressing what we call a positive need versus a negative need. So it's always more constructive to say, I would love you to start doing this for me. Our tendency too often, Nikki, is to say, can you please stop doing that? Sort of a thing. And that can kind of shut down the person. But if you can instead think of what we call a positive need and say, I would just feel so great if you could do this for me. You know, I've always had it done. Do you think you could do it for me as well?
Wow. So it's important to communicate your love language. Tell me again, please, because I don't want to leave without people knowing. How can we know our love language?
And again, I think it comes from keen observation of how, whether it's our partner, our child, or friend, how they respond to us when we are trying to connect and affirm them, you know, observing whether they light up, whether they notice, whether they respond. Also noticing how being sensitive to how they express love to you, because quite often how I speak my love language to you is probably the way that I best understand receiving it as well. So it's being tuned to how the person expresses their love to you, and then also being attuned to how they respond to you when you use any of the 5 approaches to expressing how you feel about them.
Okay, so being in tune. Now, what about culture and upbringing? Do they actually determine our love language?
They certainly do. Let me start with upbringing. There are a number of theories that would suggest as a child, you probably learned to receive and give love in specific ways. Perhaps, for example, your parents regularly hugged you or told you how much they loved you. That would be expressions of physical touch and words of affirmation. Or maybe instead they showed their love by always taking you places, showing up at your games at school, cheering you on. That would be acts of service, and that would also be a way of expressing love in quality time, even if they may not be the hugging types. So it's kind of the environment that you grew up in sometimes grooms and forms your love language, as it were. Simply put, quite often it's how your parents express their love for you, and is how you may have adopted the love languages of your own. Now, in the same way that your parents are form a guide around you, so does your culture as well. So your culture has certain boundaries, since we mentioned that word before. You know, different cultures have different boundaries that regulate human interaction. And so those boundaries would now form a part of people's love languages. So there are some cultures where touch between genders is not appropriate except if we're partners, and only except if we're in private, for example. So that would have an impact on the individuals within that culture in terms of how much they depend on, express, or expect physical touch as a love language, for example. So both things. And culture with a big C in terms of the culture of your community, environment, and so on, but also culture of your family with a little c are important components in how your love language develops.
Wow. So is it possible not to have a love language?
I think not, because the truth is, Nikki, is that we're social animals, right? We thrive because we're social, and we experience distress when we're isolated. And the way that we are cohesive and we stick together is through interactions that feel good, where we feel affirmed, where we feel safe. And so that's almost hardwired into us. The need for a sense of belonging from our community, and we experience that through affirmation, encouragement, positive emotions when we are around individuals in our community. So it's almost like a hardwired need that social animals, which we are, Homo sapiens, which we are, it's almost a part of who we are, you know?
Yes, I've learned so much today. We need to learn some more, so please come back. We need to learn more about the love languages. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Love, you're welcome. Love is the word today. And remember, it's a doing word, a verb. Thank you, Mrs. Sonia Winter. I look forward to us speaking again. Stay blessed, everyone.
This was Let's Talk Family, a production of Family Life Ministries. If you or anyone you know would like advice and counseling, call us or head office at 1 Cecilio Avenue at 876-926-8101, 876-929-4360, or 876-920-1034, or center in Port Moore at 117 Cecile Avenue at 876-939-7917.